So I think we'll get started. As I say, we've got three great presentations to get through. So welcome to this first report out of 2024, and Happy New Year to folks. And we're going to start. I wonder if Manu has had chance. Oh yes, I can see you. Marvelous. Right. So we're going to hear about the next stage in the RPIW 30-day report out from on patient flow. So really looking forward to hearing the next phase of this. So over to colleagues from ED. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Tara. I'm a service manager for the LGIMMT department, and I was a process owner for the Rapid Improvement Week, looking at the patient flow within RAU. Next slide, please. So just a bit of background on this for those that aren't aware. So currently our RAU team within ED is where the majority of our walk-in patients go. What we know is that these patients have a long time in the department, have a long waiting time. The average time for patients with the timings was just under 4 hours and 20 minutes, which if you look at the emergency care standard of a patient being seen, treated and discharged in 4 hours, the process was just wasteful. So what we did have was a Rapid Improvement Week, and the sponsor challenge that we had was for patients to be turned around within 2 hours. So next slide, please. So during our Rapid Improvement Week, we did a number of trial days, and we came up with a number of ideas. So the one that we put to test was that patients would be seen by a clinician and a nurse at further assessment, which is different to the previous process where patients would see a nurse for further assessment and then wait for long periods before seeing a doctor and getting their treatment plan. So we did a couple of trial days, and following those trial days, we did adjust the process very slightly. As you can tell from our Rapid Improvement Week, we got the lead time down to 1 hour and 25 minutes, which is absolutely fantastic. From the 9th of January, so Tuesday this week, we actually went live with the process. And this week we've had a bit of a focused implementation of this. So we've had people in the department, and as part of our 30-day review, our timings are based off this week, just because that's when we started the process permanently. So as part of this, our lead time is well within our sponsor challenge. So it's 1 hour and 54 minutes, the average time that patients were turned around, and actually quite a lot of people that we were viewing as they're going through the process were discharged at assessment by a doctor or TCI to the most appropriate patient, which is really, really good patient experience. And the patients that we did speak to said that they would highly recommend this process. The work in progress time was down to 12 minutes. Again, the baseline figure 38, so massive improvement. And actually it's even more of an improvement from our Rapid Improvement Week time. The SWIP time was 10 minutes, which again down from 23. We had 0% defects, so in all quality defects we had 0%. So again, that's really good for our patients. And there isn't any on here, but we have spoken to patients and their experience was good. And Manu, I'm going to pass on to Manu for the next slide. He's just going to talk a little bit about staff satisfaction. So next slide, please.
Thank you, Tara. My name is Manu. I'm an ED consultant and process owner for this. Now, with every change, there's lots of challenges. What went well is what we like to focus on. Time to see a patient was reduced massively. Patients ended up having the right treatment at the right place first time around, rather than having lots of other investigations and tests and further tests later on. All that was cut down. So from patient point of view, they were getting what they wanted as soon as they arrived, which is very good. Overall, it improved our ECS, which is where we are measured against nationally. So again, very positive. What would you have done differently? The first thing I put is staff communication. I'd almost say staff communication expectation. With any change, there's always a challenge. Understanding why we're doing the change, how the change is affecting them. And if you're asking people to work slightly differently, it's always a challenge. So lots of communication. I feel communication could have been better. We could have actually got more people on board. Despite us trying, I feel it's always needed. You need to get more people on board. And based on what we've started, it suddenly became a new way and an old way, and old way was always good kind of feel. So we needed a better messaging to say new way was better, got more people on board. And our estimation based on the RPIW week worked on a lot of enthusiasm of the people working that day. That estimation towards normal day-to-day practice, we could have done a little bit more differently, or rather been a little bit more pragmatic with that. Next 30 days, we've understood by doing this process, we've taken away the skill from the nursing team. So we would like to bring back the nurse-led discharge again. We'd like to allocate a SDM or a senior clinician at the front end, and probably a better estimation of clinician versus patient ratio would be better, so we can manage expectation better. On the whole, positive, and I almost like to call this as business as usual rather than going back to old and new ways. That is the way forward. We've started in right earnest from the 9th of January. 3 days on, it's running with lots of changes, with starts and stops. I'm hoping to have it running constantly as time goes. Next slide, please. Thank you. Any questions?
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Tara and Manu. Really good work, really good presentation as well. And I think lots of good lessons and learning for us there. We'll take questions at the end as we will normally. So hopefully you'll be able to stay on to hear our next two presentations, and then we'll open it out on all three. So just hold there if we could, but thanks both for that. So can we move on to Emmanuel, who I think I heard at the beginning of before we started, so I know you're here with us. So can we hear from you, Emmanuel, about accessibility and training?
Yes, absolutely. Hello, everyone. My project was on accessibility in training. I started with project with, in addition to the fact that I wanted to resolve the issue, a very specific constraint and a very specific objective. I had a project who needed to be achieved in 3 months' time. That was the delay for the report out. And I wanted to come up with practical answer to the recurrent issue. So the first step I took, and I'm going to ask for the next slide, please, is to analyze the project to reach a focus which would accommodate the constraint and the goal. I started with a very broad generality, which was the current provision doesn't work. It's never adequate or efficient, and it's generating stress, resentment for both parties involved in the training provision, the user and the training provider. Based upon, I analyzed that first hypothesis using the Gemba methodology, which I had used previously in another project, relying specifically on 2 principles of the Gemba methodology: observe, question, and respect, and identifying within the whole hypothesis significant nuggets on which I could work on. I came up with a second refined hypothesis, which is communication support in public events. It's never offered or fully provided, with a focus on a specific public, deaf and hard of hearing user, with the necessity to keep transferability in mind, with a practical approach to reach a practical answer, looking at exclusively in this set of action on the perspective of the users with a plan to lead another set of action to look at the perspective of the trainer and training provider, and a specific interest in the root cause analysis, adding a bit later two secondary objectives following discussion with equality, diversity, inclusion senior leaders, initiating a collective ownership between the both parties and embedding accessibility in everyday practice. Based upon this redefinition and renewed first hypothesis, may I have the next slide, please? I worked on 3 actions, each one feeding, shaping the next one. The first one was to identify the standard we failed to meet. The second one was to understand the adverse outcome, leading what I call the confidential brainstorming, 3 participants, all of them having experience of hearing loss, all of them having experience of training and event organization for deaf and hard of hearing people. And we applied the WHY methodology, 1 hour and a half. And based upon these 2 precedent actions, I led 2 national workshops online, 14 participants with the complete spectrum of deafness and hearing loss, brainstorming on 4 topics, 5 actually, with a clear objective of coming up with practical and applicable solutions. How can I say that? Sorry. The participants have been clearly informed that we weren't looking for empathy, we were looking for solution. Next slide, please. I am just at the beginning of analyzing the data we have collected through the workshop, and we have already identified 4 main topics as root cause of the recurrent issue. The first topic is an invisibility of the problem. There are no clear data, there are no specific policy, and I couldn't find any wildly non-successful implementation in any trust. It's also complicated by the fact that there are no public per se. Deaf and hearing loss cover a wide spectrum of condition, of identity, of needs, and therefore of demand for communication support, which actually leads to a very puzzling situation for the training provider when provision is requested, because they're not a single answer. The second issue and cause of the issue is the communication support itself. It's considered and approached as the sole responsibility of the demanding user. Demanding user who, for many of them, particularly for people who have acquired hearing loss, which represent 83% of the people who have declared a long-term condition, they have to learn what could help them. They are, I'm sorry to be so brutal, totally ignorant of what could help them. They don't know what reasonable adjustment is. They don't know what access to work is. And last issue in the communication support, requesting communication support, point out the user, a user who generally doesn't want to stick out. It's also act as a repellent for the other participant within the group, which makes the demand even more difficult for the demanding user. The third issue is the training provider themselves. They don't anticipate the demand. They don't understand it. they are not prepared to adapt, or they simply can't. They don't have the understanding, but also they don't have the support to set up technology or adaptation or room which would accommodate the demand. This inevitably lead to a mistrust, an antagonism between the user and the provider. The fourth issue is the technology itself. Assistive listening technology has tremendously progressed over the last 10 years. It's a magnificent tool, but it has become so complex that the demanding users need the support of IT services to be able to set it up, to be able to use it, and to be able to fix it. IT services consider that it's not their responsibility. They don't have necessarily the skills to deal with specific devices. And also the general culture is this is the sole responsibility of the user, and the user is totally overwhelmed by the complexity of the tool which could really help them. And the last issue, which, as I explained at the beginning, wasn't an issue I was looking for. We want answer, not empathy. It's a quote I pick up in the transcript and I put on this PowerPoint. Unnoticed, unvalued, I've got no voice. I don't think we will resolve accessibility if we don't acknowledge and address the strain we put, all of us, on our colleagues by constantly ignoring their demand. We are ignoring individuals. We are ignoring skills, competencies, because we don't understand how we can work together to make them feel valued. So, based upon this action, the next step, and may I ask for the next slide, please, is to build up from this experimentation. We would like to pursue and implement real changes within the Leeds Teaching Hospital culture. The first things we want to do is to finish the analysis of the data we have collected. And we are going to seek for senior leader support to be able to run that training provider workshop, banking up on the catharsis of a shared discussion to be able to truly work together and set up a proper policy which is going to serve the provider and the users. And the second thing we want to encourage, and we are going to work on that definitely, is to convince the trust to establish and set up a deaf and hard of hearing networks, which is what NHS England is doing currently. And the first line of action that networks would do is to lead information session for the users, for the training provider, and for IT services on reasonable adjustment, assistive listening device, and access to work. As for Leeds improvement method, which is the purpose of this report out, I have to say, and really it's not being a sycophant, I am really pleased to say that I have finally found a methodology for project management, which is comprehensive, practical, I am a practical person, and flexible enough to be adapted to all the projects and other projects I'm leading in my work when I'm not looking at the deaf and hard of hearing people. I have completely reviewed and restarted the digitalization project I'm leading currently with the methodology used as Leeds improvement method and very strong encouragement to all the members of the action group to follow the training. And I have also completely reviewed the project I'm leading for equal access to healthcare for deaf and hard of hearing people, based upon that Leeds improvement method, manageable chunk, small victory, and embedding the project into the Leeds Dental Institute objective, and we start again for Fun Alternative, which is now merged into the digitalization project. I think it's you kill two birds with one stone. Voilà. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. A really important topic, and touches on many things that we need to think about for across our organisation, but also the public that we serve as well. So some really important points, and thanks for sharing that kind of early stage work. So appreciate that. So let's move straight on. I can see Zara on the call. Hi, Zara. So can we come straight over to you to give us an update on the work you've been doing in the OPAT service?
Yes, hello. My name's Zara. I'm one of the pharmacists working within the OPAT team and within the pharmacy infection team. So this first slide, just before we move on, is what the project is about. This is about innovating medicine delivery within the OPAT service specifically. And this is known as an AccuFuser device that delivers antimicrobials over a 24-hour period. So for example, rather than having to give or receive antibiotics 3 or 4 times a day, essentially you could set this up and this is what is infused throughout the day for a patient. So it's a lot more efficient, and this is something that we use within the OPAT service already. Next slide, please. So the problems and the challenges, I guess, we had before coming into this is we have pre-made devices, and these are often made by the home care companies, and naturally are quite expensive, and there are a couple of delays associated with delivery, and there have been some recent issues we found within the service where there is some residual volume remaining in the AccuFuser device, and patients have said to us, actually, we're not sure if the antibiotic's working properly, there is some volume left. So there were a couple of issues that kind of came to the forefront within MDT, and we had been working towards looking at alternatives, and the team have kind of done a lot of background work. This is a big project I think that's been going on for some time, and a lot of different people have been involved. So from 2021 is actually when we started to use the nurse prepared AccuFuser devices. So essentially they are the same, but it's just that our nursing team prepare them. So it gives us a lot more flexibility in terms of the preparation, and just making sure that actually we're not having to wait for deliveries and there aren't other delays in that process. And the challenges to us using more of the nurse prepared AccuFuser devices is really due to staffing shortages, not having all of the doses available that we would normally have an order by the home care company, and then your usual approval processes, quality assurance, etc. And I guess that supposedly leads into inequity and variation in care, because it means that, if you had one, you had capacity that day, and the nursing team were really fully staffed, you might be discharged a day earlier than you would if you were to wait for 24 hours and receive your home care device. So there is variation within that service. And I think for us within the team, what we wanted to review was how we are able to provide a sustainable change. And this is something that we can then say, actually, this is something that we can deliver on. So this project is really about how we try to address some of those issues. Next slide, please. So this is just a little bit of a comparison. I don't think I'm going to go into this in too much detail, just given the time, but the two on the left-hand side, There's 2 lines that are highlighted in purple, the piperacillin tazobactam 13.5 and Fluclox at 8 grams. So these 2 are the only ones that we did offer via the nurse prepared AccuFusers. So already we were aware that we needed to look at offering more of them if we were going to be able to interchange between home care and between the ones that the nurses prepared. And just to kind of say, actually, the key stakeholders, which was the OPAT team and our lead clinician, we felt that we were all pretty much on the same page. We wanted to have this as an option, so it didn't feel like we had to convince too many people that this was an option that was worth the buy-in and the work. Next slide, please. So in terms of actions, there were a lot of actions. I think this is quite a big project, quite an ambitious one. We started with mapping out the workflow and comparing costs. So I think as a team, the comparing costs is really what we did together. And our lead clinician, Dr. Jo Allen, who's on the call today, worked with our service managers and business managers to look at putting the cost comparisons and actually if we were to move to the nurse AccuFusers, how much we could save. And this then led to including those figures within a business case and then help solve one of our problems, which is addressing the staff shortages. So hopefully our team will now be growing and we will be able to commit to doing this for more patients. And then seeking approval, as I mentioned, SOPs and engaging key stakeholders. So there were a lot of different groups and people involved and different priorities, I guess, for different people. So LIM really helped with that, I think, trying to identify what each group's priority was, whether it was safety, whether it was quality, whether it was cost, etc. And in terms of LIM tools, I found that the process mapping, the spaghetti diagram, and just touching on some of the LIM metrics and what we'd like to measure going forward when we've fully made the change was quite useful. Next slide, please. In terms of engaging the teams, I had mentioned actually it felt that we were pretty engaged. I think the key people who we needed to have that buy-in and were approving of the process and what we wanted to do were very much happy with the suggestions. But we have various team meetings and there were some baseline audits as well that we did looking at the pre-med devices and actually just confirming that there were a couple of issues with them. I guess it's easy to make assumptions and to extrapolate one result to say that this is the case everywhere, but actually looking at that really helped us kind of justify why the nurse prepared AccuFusers was worth looking into. It links with the trust commitments. I think we kind of knew from the very beginning that actually if we used one nurse prepared AccuFuser rather than the home care device, we would already be saving one bed day for a patient. And if we were able to do that for more patients, we would be saving bed days. So that was definitely something that that supported this project. Next slide, please. So this is just a bit of a summary of how we've kind of done things previously and how the home care AccuFusers have worked. And as you can see, there's a lot of different delays within that process and a lot of waste that we could minimise. So I won't go into that into too much detail. I'm pretty sure it's fairly self-explanatory, but the next slide is what I want to bring you to, because this is what we would like to move towards more, because I think there is still some waste, as there always will be, but what we've simplified and what we hope to simplify on is actually this is an electronic prescription. We're not having to have a paper prescription that the nurse is having to take to the doctors, to take to the pharmacist, to take to the dispensary. So already we've kind of reduced that waste significantly. We've saved some of the nursing time, which can then be put back into preparing the device. So this is hopefully what we're looking at. So even if we start with one device initially, as we grow our team, hopefully we might be able to do this for patients throughout their entire course of treatment. Next slide, please. This is just a bit of a spaghetti diagram, and I think it doesn't probably show how much waste is involved in the trips and taking the prescriptions, but I can assure you it's not always as simple as that. There's always a lot of delays and changes, but just for the sake of putting it on paper, I think there was a lot of different bits that we've reduced time on, hopefully, by making this change. Next slide, please. Sorry, I'm talking quite fast as I just want to try and wrap up. What outcome did the team end up putting in after our actions were made into practice? I think for us, it's very much we are waiting for staff. The business case is gone. We're waiting for recruitment. And as soon as we've kind of got our full team, we're quite keen to kind of move ahead. So we've got our metrics and what we'd like to look at in terms of data collection. So hopefully that will be something we can hopefully bring back at some point. Next slide, please. These are the metrics that I think we're going to hopefully look at, and I just wanted to draw your attention to the cost. I think based on the previous figures, these are the savings up to this amount, and this is what the figure was that went to the business case. Next slide, please. The last couple of bits I will just mention is I think to me, this has been a brilliant project, and we've had so many people involved and a lot of support. And there's a lot more people involved than just me, but I would like to kind of point out that actually OPAT's quite a unique service. Before coming into the team, I've not worked in any other area that's been able to save as many bed days or to be able to do what they do. And I think it's just worth highlighting that. And actually, through the use of these devices, we'll be able to do that even more than what we've already done. Next slide, please. So the last kind of few steps for us, I guess, is to, I think in terms of reflection, we could split the project into different stages, but I think there's a lot of excitement about cost savings and about saving time and about waste. So I think we've done pretty well actually considering. And I think in terms of the next steps, like I mentioned before, we're really waiting for our recruitment, and hopefully we can get going with the phase 2, which is going to be implementing wider use of the nurse prepared AccuFuses. And it may be something we might look into in terms of inpatients as well. That might be scope for improvement there. I think that might be it. And then just a couple of pictures of our whole team, who are really the team that are the ones delivering the work, really. But yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Sarah, for that great presentation. And again, fantastic use of the methodology and such an opportunity for kind of efficiency savings and opportunities to benefit patients whilst doing that, which is really great. So we're just a little bit over time, but I'm sure we've got some time for some questions or comments for all three or whoever of our great presentations that we've heard just now. So I think we've got Jenny and then James.
Brilliant 3 presentations. I just wanted to say to Tara and Manu, those results look brilliant, don't they? And I love that you're sticking with it and just try to get it just right. But because it's quite a big change that you're trying to make in there, so well done. Keep going, because it's really giving you some significant benefits, isn't it? And to Emmanuel, it's lovely to see you again. We have a learning, education and training committee that have got all of the training leads, all that come together in one place. So maybe I can help you with that action number 1, Emmanuel, if that's okay. And just love the numbers in terms of the benefits that you're seeing, Zara. So well done, brilliant work.
Okay, thanks, Jenny. James?
Yeah, thanks all. Really struck today by how all 3 projects are looking at taking the Leeds improvement method and using its change process in a sustainable way to deliver benefits for patients and the trust. My question was for Manu. You mentioned that you're noticing that with the new pathway, patients are getting to their outcome being turned around whilst requiring fewer unnecessary diagnostic tests. And I wondered if you were capturing any metrics around that, because there'll undoubtedly be both a cost saving and potentially or likely also a carbon saving in terms of our efforts around environmental sustainability. So I didn't know if that was something that you were able to actually capture any data points on.
Okay, thanks, James. Tara, you wanted to come back in on that?
Sorry, yeah, I know you asked Manu, but so just looking at in particular the cost, so things like blood tests, scans. So it's one of the actions that I think I'm going to pick up is working with our PLIX team, because undoubtedly we will have, quite a big reduction in unnecessary diagnostics, and that is something that we already do have at A&E tool. So we'll look into that and work with them.
Great, thanks, Tara.
Thank Tara and Manu. Thank you very much for a really important piece of work around the kind of improvement work for patients in urgent care. Emmanuel, I think thank you just for thinking about something that the sort of silent voice issue I think was really powerful coming across. Is we don't know what we don't know until actually we start to think about the experience of colleagues, and also thinking then about how it will help us be a better healthcare organisation. And fantastic work, Zara, on a really important service, and again thinking about opportunities that we don't always think about in terms of how can we make patients' lives better, whilst also being much more efficient in terms of how we deliver healthcare. So 3 really great presentations using the methodology, engagement with people in the areas of the organisation, and most of all beneficial for patients. So well done to all those presentations, and we'll end our report out there. Thanks very much, everybody.